Returning home from a lacrosse match, Princess Angelize passes by the scene of a young mother having her infant daughter confiscated by the state for being in Norma, a person who is unable to use mana. Ange approaches the mother and enrages her further by giving a propagandist anti-Norma sentiment. That evening, Angelize's mother Sophie gives her a ring to mark her baptism ritual, a coming-of-age ceremony linked to her ascension to the throne. On the day of the baptism ritual, her brother Julia reveals to the audience that Angelize is actually a Norma herself. While everyone is in shock, her mother Sophie helps her escape. Her sister Sylvia faints, and her father is restrained and imprisoned. Giulio then declares himself the new emperor. Sophia is killed while trying to help her daughter escape, and Angelize is hauled away to an island prison called Arsenal, where she is stripped of her possessions and rights as a citizen, renamed Ange, and forcibly recruited into the military. On her first day as a soldier, Arsenal commander Jill assigns her to the first squadron led by Captain Zola, a hedonistic woman, and introduces Ange to the unit. Ange is then supervised by Celia, a quiet lieutenant and Zola's second-in-command. In the Paramail simulator, Ange recalls that her aerial lacrosse matches are similar to the Paramail controls. After days of training, Zola reveals that Ange is doing well in her routine, and Celia gives Ange some supplies and place to sleep. At the canteen, Ange is joined by Zola's allies, who remind her that her royalty status is now gone and she must accept that she is a Norma. Ange leaves the table, and Coco reveals to Ange that she likes her and wants to go to the Miss Yorubi Empire. In her room, she writes a letter requesting her release. Jill reads Angie's request but declines, and Zola attempts to violate her. Ange fights back and Zola's artificial eye pops out. During her altercation, the command is alerted that a singularity portal is about to open and the first squadron is dispatched. In their dispatch, Ange attempts to flee while Silly pursues her, and Coco attempts to join Ange in going back to the Misurgi Empire. However, the portal opens and a dragon kills Coco. Ange is now in shock from what she sees from the dragon's attack. The dragon's brigade, consisting of 22 schooners and a galleon type, appears to as the squadron puts their paramail into assault mode and attacks the horde. Miranda grieves over Coco's death, but the schooners eat her alive, as Zola is about to deliver the killing blow on the galleon-type dragon. A shocked Ange accidentally bumps into her, and the galleon-type destroys their units. Ange survives the crash, but Zola is killed. At the infirmary, Zola's unit puts the blame for her death on an injured Ange. Jill promotes Celia and Hildegard to the ranks of captain and lieutenant respectively. Jill assigns Ange to pilot a unique paramail that other pilots consider ancient. The unit heads out and hunts their previous enemy. The galleon-type dragon chases and attacks Ange, but she awakens Vilcus in assault mode and destroys the galleon-type. Back at the Arsenal cemetery, she cuts her hair to signify her new life at Arsenal and vows to do whatever it takes to survive. After their mission, the squadron collects their bounty and Ange gets the highest amount. Meanwhile, Celia is shown studying military manuals about leadership, and Vivian starts taking a liking to Ange. However, Celia dreams of piloting Vilcus. Aviba Zolwa's quarters, Hilda heads to the hangar and sabotages Vilcus. During their next attack, the squadron maintain their formation until Ange rushes forward. However, Vilcus encounters a malfunction during the assault, but Ange ignores and transforms Vilcus into assault mode. A schooner rushes to Ange and they wrestle on the sea, during which Ange's cockpit was filled with water, making her unconscious. Later, Ange wakes up tied in a bed naked. She tries to scream while the boy is explaining her current situation, which ends up with Ange breaking free and the boy being beaten. Meanwhile, at Arsenal, Jill orders Celia to search for Ange. Ange heads to the shore where Vilcus in assault mode is half submerged in the sea. She discovers that Hilda's underwear stuffed in an intake valve was the reason for Vilcus' malfunction, while the boy follows her. As rain falls, Ange seeks shelter, but she is bitten by a snake, which causes her to become unconscious due to the snake's venom. The boy rescues her by sucking the venom on her left leg and treats her in his hideout. The boy states that his name is Tusk but does not disclose his true identity to Ange. They spend some quality time together, but are interrupted when a fleet carrying a brig-class dragon appears above them and a schooner attacks them from the sea. Ange attacks the schooner while Tusk rushes to repair Vilcus. As Ange feels hopeless, Vilcus, suddenly reacting to her ring, shoots the schooner and Ange kills it. At dawn, Ange formally introduces herself to Tusk and the rescue team arrives. Tusk later pays his respects to his fallen comrades and leaves the island piloting a paramail. Ange's former personal maid Momoko stows away on a transport vehicle that delivers supplies to Arsenal. She was then caught and Ange is surprised by Momoka's arrival. Despite Momoka being delighted to see her, Ange becomes cold to her and resents her because Momoka is a reminder of her life in the palace. The next day, Momoka is about to leave Arsenal, where at the last minute Ange halts Momoka's departure by buying her using her money from her savings. At the cafeteria, Hilda questions Celia's leadership. The next on their defensive sortie, Celia and her squadron intercept a land-based dragon who uses a spell of gravitational pull where everyone is grounded and cannot make an attack. Ange, on Celia's orders, destroys the dragon's left horn to dispel the gravitational pull, and the squadron kills the dragon. Later, Momoka intercepts an emergency message where Sylvia asks that she found Ange and then screams as if she were being attacked. Arsenal holds the annual festa as giving Mormons a day off from their usual duties. Ange sneaks into Misty's mansion and talks to her that she needs help. Meanwhile, Momoka searches for Ange and Hilda talks to her at gunpoint. Simultaneously, Ange and Misty head to the armory to gather weapons and proceed to the hangar. However, Hilda commands via gunpoint to Momoka to control the transport, and Ange keys them, as well pointing her gun at Hilda. Forming an unlikely alliance, Hilda frees the transport, and Ange tells Momoka to fly the aircraft. After reaching their destination, Ange of Momoka and Hilda part ways and tells that they must survive so they can meet again. Ange and Momoka heads to the Monsieur de Empire. Hilda steals some clothes before heading to her mother, who lives in the outskirts of Endred Union. As she was about to reveal her name to her mother, a young girl appears, and her mother called the girl Hilda, which surprises her. The young Hilda learns that Hilda is a normal, which scares and causes her to faint. At her mother's request, Hilda leaves but is soon ambushed by the police. Meanwhile, Ange and Momoka prepare their advance on the Imperial Palace. They head to the Iria hangar and meet Ange's friend Akiho, who is terrified upon seeing Ange. As Ange steals a vehicle, Akiho attempts to make an emergency call, but Ange quickly discovers Akiho's call and restrains her, but she breaks free nonetheless. As they maneuver around the Imperial capital, they are ambushed and chased until Ange enters a hidden passage known only to royalty. As they reach the Imperial Palace, Ange is confronted by Imperial guards and rescues Sylvia. However, Sylvia turns on Ange and cuts her arm with a knife, seemingly blaming her sister for her paralysis and the death of their mother. Devastated by Sylvia's words, Ange is captured by the Imperial guards to await trial by Giulio. Ange is presented in front of the entire Missouri Empire for a public trial, where she is whipped by Sylvia and ruthlessly mocked and scorned by the crowd. Giulio reveals to Angie of their father executed and condemns her to a public hanging. She is then hanged, but Tusk suddenly saves her. The trio flee from the Empire, with Ange wounding Giulio's face using a thrown blade. As they head to Arsenal, Tusk tells Ange that Jill knows everything about Vilkas and his orders that Ange must survive. Upon arriving at Arsenal, Ange and Hilda are detained, and they tell their bitter stories, realizing what fools they were to believe there was hope in their respective countries. They both decide to destroy the twisted world they once had hoped for once they are released. Then Ange starts singing, and entire Arsenal staff hears it. Disturbed after their encounter with Ange during the execution, Sylvia heads to Giulio's room, where she finds Giulio and Riza in a seemingly romantic moment. Riza drops a peculiar liquid into Giulio's mouth, and Sylvia sees Riza as a monster with wings and a tail. As she finds out the truth, Riza uses her tail to strangle Sylvia, who screams for help. Meanwhile, a singular portal opens above Arsenal, and a vast array of schooner-type dragons appear, storming the base along with 3 paramales led by a Ren paramale, which unleashes a powerful beam which destroys a good part of Arsenal and the island, killing several pilots along its path. Celia's squadron is sent to intercept the enemies, but Celia uses Vilkas despite Jill's objections. Jill orders the release of Hilda and Ange. Ange assumes command of Vilkas, engaging a mysterious paramale evenly in combat. The mysterious paramale suddenly stops, and the pilot starts singing. Realizing it's the same song she sang, Ange responds by singing as well, causing her ring to glow, which makes the Vilkas react. Both paramales fire a beam that collide in midair. Ange confronts the pilot and seemingly sees their history in elation. The pilot quickly leaves, telling Ange the truth lies with the aura. In the aftermath, Jill assesses the condition of Arsenal while Vivian enjoys lying on her bed even though the room is destroyed. The leaders of the world hold a meeting together to discuss the dragon's attack on Arsenal, but ended up arguing with each other. Ambriel, one of the leaders, proposes that they destroy the current world in order to create a new one. Meanwhile, in Arsenal, Hilda assumes the position of captain as Celia has been detained for disobeying orders. Ange talks about the history of the world, including how humans obtained the ability to use mana and why Normas were discriminated against. Ange later notices that Jill did not answer her question about the dragons, and is about to question Jill further when suddenly a dragon survivor is discovered in the base. It is revealed that the dragon is Vivian, and she hums Ange's song, which Ange recognizes and starts singing along with Vivian that was in dragon form. Vivian is returned human form, and Ange realizes that dragons are actually human beings. Ange is devastated upon discovering a group of dragons being burned and vows not to kill dragons or pilot Vilkas anymore. However, a fleet arrives at Arsenal with Giulio on board the flagship. As Julio's fleet advances to Arsenal, Jill orders the entire staff to ignore the message and prepare to defend themselves as she initiates Operation Libertas. The naval fleet sees Arsenal arming up their defenses, causing Julio to command an attack on Arsenal. Jill also orders Celia to guard Ange and May to bring the Vilcus underground, where she and her crew descend to a submarine called Aurora built underneath Arsenal. Julio's troops enter Arsenal and kill several people. Meanwhile, Ange ignores Celia's warnings as she and Momoka flee to the cafeteria. However, Julio's troops apparently attack Momoka, but Ange staves her and interrogates one of the soldiers. Ange decides to head out and confront Julio using the Vilcus. Ange then activates the Vilcus powers, giving it a new red color, and attacks the soldiers and their mana-powered weapons as she heads to Julio. She finally confronts Julio and she is about to kill him, but Embryo intervenes using his Black Angel Ragnamail to stop Ange. Embryo taunts Ange and subtly sings to activate its powerful attack, killing Julio and annihilating his naval fleet in the process. Ange seemingly survives Embryo's attack and Embryo targets Tusk and Vivian. Embryo sings again and Ange attempts to save Tusk, transforming the Vilcus again, this time giving it a bluish appearance. The Black Angel fires, but Vilcus disappears along with Tusk and Vivian. Back at Arsenal, the Aurora becomes operational and they escape Arsenal. Ange abruptly wakes in a desolate place and meets Tusk and Vivian, who has become a dragon again. They assume if the place is in a different dimension, far away from Arsenal. Ange makes a reconnaissance and she is stunned to see the column of dawn like in the Mystery of the Empire. Later, a management computer called Himawari activates and reveals that over 500 years ago, the Seventh World War took place. Due to this abnormal situation, Earth became a place that is almost impossible to survive in. Unable to accept the situation that they are currently in, Ange becomes frustrated. After finding a well-preserved room, Tusk tells Ange that Embryo, who is the supreme leader who united the world, has been manipulating humanity from behind the scenes, and that he is the arch-nemesis of ancient human. Meanwhile, Ange and Tusk enjoy some peaceful time together and their bond deepens. However, two strangers riding on a dragon burst into the house. The warriors inform them that the place they are currently in is another Earth, the true Earth. Ange, Tusk, Vivian, and the Vilcus are transported by dragons to a castle in the mountains, where Vivian is shot with a tranquilizer dart and taken away. Ange and Tusk are taken to see the High Priestess and her council. Things look grim until Salamande, the pilot Ange met above Arsenal, offers them hospitality and to show the two their world. During a tea ceremony, Ange's patience runs thin, but Salamande not only shows Ange how they survived on their Earth, but also the source of the Mon of Light and the truth of the war between Arsenal and the dragons and Embryo. Ange tries to attack Salamande but is quickly subdued. She wakes up in hospital bed with a Vivian looking after her and learns that Vivian can now control her transformations thanks to Dr. Gecko adjusting her dragon gene. Salamande then challenges Ange to a competition where if she wins, Ange must assist them in fighting against Embryo. But if she loses, Ange is freed. They then compete for tennis, baseball, golf, various other sports, and by so doing, they are able to develop a friendship. Suddenly, an unstable singular point appears. Sala moves into the offensive in an attempt to help the people, and Ange pilots the unfinished Vilcus to help Vivian. Although she is confused at the proposal of Ange, Sala embraces the idea of negating the effects of her weapon with the Vilcus and closes the singular point. In the hot springs, Sala reveals to Ange that she has discovered Aura deep underground in the Mystery Empire, and that they must march with all power to the Mystery Empire through a singular point to recapture it. Sala tells Ange that she trusts her judgment and that if she were to go to the war front with Ange, she would be very glad. After Ange has made her decision, Sala arrives. She tells Ange that she respects Ange's decisions. Ange, Tusk, and Vivian head to Singularity Point and embark on the world where they have formerly lived. After the Singularity Point opens, they find that they are not in the skies of the Mystery Empire where they originally planned to emerge, and soon they realize that they have been ambushed. Riza is imprisoned in a punishment chamber of the Mystery Empire, where Embryo forces the secret of the army's strategy out of Riza and thus staves off an attack of Sala's forces. Sala's battlefront is pushed back and Sala is left unsure of how to proceed. She resolves to withdraw following advice of Ange and Tusk. Ange makes up her mind to fight in order to give Sala time to reach the Singularity Point, and as a result, Sala is able to return to the other Earth. In response to being attacked, Ange battles a group of people and, in the end, learns that the people attacking her are her former co-workers from Arsenal who are under Embryo's control, tries to capture her but fail because of the interference by Tusk and Vivian. Finally, the Vilcus allows Ange to teleport to Arsenal where she meets Mocha. In the Aurora, Jill is told that Ange came from the other side of the Singularity Point, and about the parallel world and the humans were able to modify their genetic structure, but she's only half convinced. Ange suggests that to overturn the status, they should cooperate with dragons. She reveals that the purpose of dragons is to recapture aura, and the singularity point would become unable to open since all energy would be cut off by then. Tusk reveals that the aurora is made by the ancient humans to fight against Embryo. Hilda says that Jill's Libera's operation is to free Norma from Embryo and their fates. The next day, Jill accepts Ange's proposal and outlines the specifics of the diversionary operation, which involves the capture of the point called the Column of Dawn, where Aura and Embryo currently are. However, Jill merely thinks of dragons as a necessary sacrifice to carry out the liberties, and she believes that the team should not attempt to help the dragons suffering. Losing her temper, Ange tells Jill that she will have to carry out the plan on her own. Jill takes Momoka hostage and threatens Ange to try to force her to cooperate. Jill says that operation is proceeding as planned and that the Vilcus is the strongest weapon to defeat Embryo. Tusk releases the noxious gas which he had installed beforehand and flees with Ange, having declined Jill's plans. However, they are cut off by Jill the flight deck. After defeating Jill, Ange decides to fight for those who believe in her, and then takes off from the flight deck in her Vilcus and starts to attack. After the Vilcus takes off, Ange asks Tusk to shoot her own plane because putting the Vilcus in danger is necessary for her to teleport to Sala's place. Tusk's fuselage is fiercely attacked by Ursha and Chris, causing Momoka to be almost thrown into the sea, but she escapes death by using mana. Ange counteracts the enemy's attack and allows the Aurora to prepare to move, and under the command of Jasmine, the Aurora is able to escape into the sea. Ange goes to rescue Momoka, but Celia waits for an opportune moment and hits Ange with a surprise attack. Ange wakes abruptly in her room in the Miserable Empire, and then she meets Momoka. Ange finds a letter from Embryo and realizes that the circumstances surrounding her are the result of Embryo's actions. Ange makes up her mind that she will go to the place where Embryo is and decides to attack him. But then Celia, who is the leader of the Diamond Rose Knights, appears and disturbs Ange. Ange tries to inquire about what happened to Celia, and Celia replies that after she was thrown away by Jill and her, she was given a helping hand by Embryo. After Celia says this, she and Ange get in a squabble and battle, and then Ange succeeds in shaking all her pursuers. In Monsieur Palace Garden, Ursha appears and reveals to Ange that she is the director of the Embryo Kindergarten. Additionally, she tells Ange that because Embryo brings children which died back to life, Ursha feels a lot of favor towards him and rallies for him. At the foot of the tree, Ange meets with Chris and asks her to give a tour of the place where Embryo is and to which Ange wants to go. Embryo meets Ange and then leaves with the car, leaving the Misuragi Empire behind. In the meeting room of the Aurora, Jill raises questions about the fate of their operation and regrets the loss of Ange, who is key to continuing the plan. In the Column of Dawn, Ange confirms the existence of the Aura and requires Embryo to release Aura, but he refuses and shows Ange that Aura plays an essential role in maintaining peace within human society. Ange tries to kill Embryo by shooting him repeatedly, but he is reborn again and again. He proclaims himself as a tutor of time. Embryo uses his ability to hypnotize Ange and tries to seduce her, but when he kisses her, an image pops into her head, breaking the spell, and she bites it. However, this makes Embryo happy and says he has been waiting for her for a long time. In Jill's bedroom, Hilda discovers that Jill is troubled by her past relationship with Embryo. In Celia's bedroom, Embryo approaches Celia and offers her to let Ange join the Diamond Rose Knights, but she refuses. Celia tries to stop Ange, who intends to pass her and confront Embryo. In the library, Embryo serves her tea before proposing to Ange that he wants to marry her to fulfill her dream to destroy the world. Embryo reveals to Ange that he had tried to change the world in which brutal and greedy ancient human beings were, and make a world filled with peace by using mana. But he tells Ange that his plans failed because the human beings living in his world essentially did not change. After Ange asks Embryo the way to change the world, he reveals that the Psalm is built based on a unified theory, and tells her that he has converted a law which influences the cosmos into a melody. He tells Ange that he plans to amplify the song using the Ragnamail to fuse both worlds and create a new world by exploiting Aura's energy. Ange refuses and attacks Embryo, but he begins to torture her. Hilda cooperates with Tusk to thwart Jill's escape attempt to find Embryo. At the Column of Dawn's prison, Momoka sees Riza being tortured by Sylvia. Riza informs Momoka that Ange is in the shelter exclusively used by royalty. In Aurora, Jill reveals that Embryo controlled her mind and she became captivated by him. She also let her friends die, and the only thing she can do to atone for her crime is to kill Embryo. Meanwhile, Embryo's attempts to torture Ange fail. Embryo gathers the other male riders for trying to carry out his plan, but Celia is not there. In a shelter, Celia tells Ange that she must leave, and Ange chokes Celia and takes the Ring of Vilcus. After Ange and Momoka escape and flee, Ursha tries to stop her, but then Vilcus appears in response to the situation. Later, Sala arrives from the Singularity Point to help Ange. On the deck of Aurora, Hilda gives an order to her Paramale squadron. The Aurora surfaces, a hatch opens, and the Hilda Corps launch their attack. Above the Miss Urani Empire, Ange meets Sala, and afterward the two separate and Sala goes to rescue Aura. Afterward, Hilda reunites with Ange, but then Ange gets targeted by Chris. Hilda has a one-on-one battle with Chris. At the riverbank where the Vilcus crashed, Momoka gives mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to Ange to try to rescue her. In a back alley, while Momoka goes to look for a car, Ange encounters an enemy who is under the control of Embryo. Meanwhile, in the car that Momoka is driving, Embryo says that because he is the creator, he has the power to control those who use mana. After they see the emergence of nondescript beings who are under the control of Embryo, Ange and Momoka move toward the building. Above the column of dawn, Sala does battle with Ursha and tells Naga and Kan-Im that it is impossible for them to recapture Aura, and that it would be a good decision for their troops to retreat and rally your army. Meanwhile, Ange arrives at the roof where Embryo is and meets Tusk. Tusk buys Ange some time to get away by battling Embryo. After Embryo teleports to the place where Ange is, Tusk also arrives there to rescue the girls, only to have Momoka attack him under control again. However, it is Ange who again breaks Momoka free, who then attacks Embryo. She is shot in the chest but then runs him through with a sword and pushes him off the cliff with a car, being caught in the explosion afterward. Tusk gets Ange to his machine, and then he kisses her, saying that he will always be by her side. Then Tusk attacks Embryo and destroying the area. Embryo is not happy with Celia as he punishes her for letting Ange escape and tells her that his new world would be only for intelligent women. Meanwhile, Riza reveals that Embryo plans to merge the two worlds by using Aura and Ragnamail. When Hilda and Sala talk about forming strategic alliances with the provision that they bring back Ange, Emma, who is being manipulated by Embryo, appears and faces off against them, but then she is interrupted by Sala. Ursha enters the library, begging Embryo in tears to raise the preschool children from the dead, but he refuses her wish. Realizing that she has been deceived by Embryo, a disillusioned Ursha buries the children and defects from Embryo. In Aurora's medical room, Riza explains that because Norma has the potential to reveal the full truth about the world of mana, they are kept in quarantine. In Tusk's room, Ange laments over Tusk's death. When Ange thinks of the happy memories with Tusk while facing the setting sun, Tusk himself arrives, and the two of them have some fun. When they return to the Tusk room, Ange is surprised and overjoyed to find that Momoka is not dead. Ange calls the Vilcus, and then they prepare for war to combat the crisis situation. Having analyzed the fact that the Column of Dawn is the center point of the space-time fusion, Hilda gives an order to the Aurora to go there, and meanwhile, they get contacted by Ange. Ange, Tusk, and the Mocha are reunited with their allies. Ange is surprised to see Ursha's Ragnamail, but is happy she returned, and even forgives Riza for her actions. She then talks to Jill about the best way to kill Embryo, and is told that the Vilcus and the Psalm will unlock the unknown world that his body is hiding in. Jill then informs her that she relinquished command to Hilda, but afterward, Hilda relinquishes command to Ange due to her royal heritage as a princess. The Aurora bulldozes its way through the encircling enemy net using its fire car, and then it bursts from the sea and flies into the air, with the Paramale squadron launching an attack. However, the Paramale controlled by Embryo blocks Ange's path. Embryo tries to use the Dimension Cannon but is stopped by Ange. Hilda and Rosalie face off against Chris as Sala and Ange head to Aura's prison, but are intersected by Celia, who wants a world without Ange. Tusk employs himself as a decoy by fighting with Embryo, and provides Ange with the opportunity to move towards Aura, but then she fights Celia. The fight between Celia and Ange is about to restart when Jill appears and challenges Celia personally. As the battle rages on, Jill tells Celia of what Embryo did to her, but Celia refuses to listen. On the Aurora, the Paramales are still protecting and fighting on as Sala heads to free Aura. As Tusk and Embryo continue fighting, Embryo tries to rattle Tusk by telling him that he will tame Ange and that Tusk will never see her wild side. However, it is Tusk who gets to him, telling him that the two made love, and she accepted him fully. Sala gets to Aura but cannot free her with her rifle as a new group of drones attacked. The Aurora's shield is taken down and they crash, and the Paramales are in trouble until Ursula launches to join the fight, and the Aura's chamber as Sala sings, the others hear it. As the Paramales get ready for a final fight as the convergence reaches 90%, Ursula leads the drones away and prepares to die to make up for her pass, but then the dragons appear to save her and join forces with Ange's crew, lifting the ship up and rejoining the fight. Embryo sacrifices his pawns to stop the dragons. Jill saves Celia from another dragon and pursues Embryo, who goes after Ange. Afterward, Ange and Sala manage to free Aura as everyone watches in awe. Embryo gets ready to leave when Jill appears, asking to go with him. When he refuses, she hits him with a cryogenic bullet, freezing his body, but his machine frees him and Jill is mortally wounded. As the distortion continues while she's distracted, Embryo grabs Ange from her machine. On the Aurora, Celia brings Jill back to the hangar bay and asks for a stretcher, but Jill refuses and reconciles with Celia with her dying breaths. The convergence starts up again, but Aura shields them and tells them that the Vilcus can take them to the place Embryo is hiding out, as it will answer the desires of its user. Meanwhile, Ange wakes up in a bed in a familiar place. As she tries to attack Embryo, he hits her. Back on the Aurora, Hilda reluctantly asks Tusk to use the ring to wake up Vilcus, as he had a stronger bond with Ange, but nothing seems to work. Embryo corners Ange, who is calling for Vilcus, but without the ring, it does not answer. He prepares to violate her when she starts singing the Endless Song, which Tusk hears and pleads with Vilcus to help protect Ange. He wakes up and links with the other two Ragnamales and Sala's machines. Tusk, Hilda, Celia, and Sala warp to the inner space region, and Sala then starts to sing her portion of the song. After that, Tusk frees Ange and picks her up, where they soon reunite. He gets off and prepares to duel Embryo with Sala's sword. Ange prepares for battle when the Vilcus transforms once more into Night Vilcus, and she and the others face off against Embryo's machine in summoned copies. On the ground, Tusk injures Embryo, realizing that it is the original he presses on, despite getting injured himself. In the sky, Hilda and Celia both realize that their machines are the same, and they both gain control of them, and they destroy the copies. Ange fires her weapon and damages the machine, destroying it altogether, while at the same time Tusk kills Embryo. Arsino returns to the real world and Aura thanks them for their help. With their mission over and having regained their freedom, the group returns to the island, where Ange voices her intent to work peacefully with the dragons while deciding to let the Otherworld's citizens live by themselves and figure things out on their own. And the Otherworld's Sylvia, along with a group of other humans, have learned to live without mana and are now surviving in the wasteland that was once their world. The end. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more cool recaps. See you next time.